Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I'm running through the current version of my Sunday sermon. Whether the conversations are religious or political, actually, in our world, a lot of them are political. The question is how to save the world. And one of the dominant approaches is favor the good and drown the bad, or marginalize the bad, or get rid of the bad, do something to get rid of the power or the influence or even the presence of bad people. Genesis 6 goes about this. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then the commonly and well-known Bible story of the flood and Noah's Ark and all of that happens. It's interesting to note that if you look at what we talked about last week in the second week of Advent, where in the book of Esther, God delivers his people from and through imperial violence through Mordecai and Esther, favor the good people, give them an upper hand over the bad people. Similar approach. Again, it's effective. In this case, the Jews were saved from their enemies, something worth celebrating, something that continues to be celebrated today. After the flood, after Babel, when even through Noah and his family, the contagion of our rebellion once again proliferated, God pivoted. The Lord had said to Abram, Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. As I've been pointing out in my study on the book of Romans, this is an unconditional promise. God simply wades in with something very different than the floodwaters, wades in and says to Abram, leave your country. I'm going to bless you. He does leave the country. And the beginning of the process of changing Abram into Abraham begins. And that process will continue through Isaac, through Jacob, through Israel. But as we saw in the first week of Advent, it always seems to be hanging by a thread. Habakkuk looks around Judah and says, the injustice, the idolatry, it's terrible. What will you do, Lord? These are your people. You're supposed to be working through them. Isn't this the means by which the world will be blessed? The book of Isaiah wrestles with many of the same themes. In Isaiah 41, the islands that are the nations, the islands have seen it and fear, and the ends of the earth tremble. They approach and come forward, and they help each other, and they say to their companions, be strong. We're going to stand up against this God who floods the world, this God who picks and chooses. But how do they do it? The metal worker encourages the goldsmith, and the one who smooths with the hammer spurs the one who strikes the anvil. One says of the welding, it is good, and the other nails down the idol so it will not topple. Injustice and idolatry. Now, for contemporary people, you might look at that and say, well, we don't set up little statues, do we? Well, yeah, we do. But idolatry isn't just about a little statue or a figurine. We saw this in the book of Habakkuk, where Habakkuk was complaining about the Babylonians. You have made people like fish in the sea, Lord. Like sea creatures that have no ruler. That's what we're like. The wicked pull all of them up with hooks, and he catches them in his net. He gathers them up in his dragnet, and so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net, and he burns incense to his dragnet. That sounds weird, but it's his tools of power that are his gods. Those are the things in which he trusts. Now, is that much different from us? Those are his idols. For by his nets he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest foods. Is he to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy? Will the cycle of empire just keep going on and on and on? In the book of Isaiah, in chapter 41, there start a group of texts that scholars often call the servant song or the servant songs. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you descendants of Abraham, my friend. There it is. This work through Abraham, started in Genesis, continues even into the exile, even when the Babylonians have destroyed the temple and destroyed the city. I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners I called you. I said, you are my servant, and I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. But the tension remains in God's people. What will it be like? Can God use a people that continue in their rebellion? Will we simply inherit the power of empire and use that? How will God reign? How will he save? What will he save? And who will he save? Isaiah 41 continues, do not be afraid, you worm Jacob. God is saying, Jacob, you're little, you're small. In the eyes of the world, you're insignificant. Little Israel, do not fear, for I myself will help you, declares the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. See, I will make you into a threshing sled, new and sharp with many teeth. That's something that you would use to thresh, to thresh the grain. You will thresh the mountains and crush them, and reduce the hills to chaff. You will winnow them, the wind will pick them up, and a gale will blow them away. Is this like the flood? Is this like using the power of empire? What is this like? But you will rejoice in the Lord and glory in the Holy One of Israel. And it continues in chapter 42. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. Is this Israel? Well, yes. But one of the things that we learn with all of this symbolic poetry is that references are fluid. They're flexible. Is he talking about a nation? Is he talking about one man? He will not shout or cry out, or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. A smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In righteousness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged, till he establishes justice on the earth. In his teaching, the islands will put their hope. Wait a minute, these islands were the groups that were against God. These islands were the people in rebellion. These islands are the nations. And now suddenly, with this servant of the Lord, the plot will turn, and now the nations, the islands, the people far away will put their hope in him, not just worm Jacob and Israel. This is what the God, the Lord, says, the creator of the heavens, who stretches them out, who spreads out the earth with all that springs from it, who gives breath to its people and life to those who walk on it. I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you, and I will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light to the Gentiles. They're included too. But wait a minute. Aren't they the enemy? Aren't they the ones who continue to assault and bring down and oppress and enslave little Jacob? To open eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name. I will not yield my glory to another, or my praise to idols. See, the former things have taken place, and new things I declare. Before they spring into being, I announce them to you, my prophets, my people. Now, there's a lot of people in the Old Testament that the Lord calls my servant or my servants. Abraham, yeah, that one's clear. Moses, that one's clear. Caleb believed in God, while many of the other spies did not. David, the one after God's own heart. Isaiah, the prophet. Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon? Wait a minute. Habakkuk saw Babylon coming and said, this can't be an answer. The Persians, from the book of Esther, they triumphed over Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. How can God make Nebuchadnezzar his servant? Zerubbabel, Job. And then these songs in Isaiah. The prophets, God's people, Israel, also plural, my servants, again and again. It's not an uncommon image. Someone, individual or collective, that God will use for his own mission. Even includes the destroyer of God's temple and the exiler of God's people. In Isaiah, there's sometimes called one or several servant songs. We saw that in chapter 41 and now 42. And the Gospel of Matthew ties this to Jesus. Aware of this, Jesus drew away to one place, and a large crowd followed him, and he healed all who were ill. Isn't that the servant of the Lord? Isn't that what we saw in chapter 42? He warned them not to tell others about him. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Here is my servant whom I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, until he brings justice through to victory. In his name the nations put their hope. Advent is the Christian New Year. Without a calendar to form you, life can become a series of chasing and avoiding until the grave finally catches up. A calendar is a way to disrupt the pattern of eating, consuming, and being consumed. The tensions remain with God's servant. The tensions remain with God's people. I gotta pause for this car. How will God reign? I would very much like to have silenced that car in that moment. How will he save? Through God's people who continue to have the problem of rebellion and struggle with it? Will he use the kind of power that empire wields? Will that be the means by which he does that? What will he save? Who will he save? These questions, my friend Jacob, and Joseph, another friend through this, my Jewish friends, they listen to my sermons and they listen to my Sunday school, and they've got feedback, often more than the Christians. And one of the things that, and I deeply appreciate their feedback because I learned from it. And one of the things Jacob says is if the Messiah had come, would the world be so bad? And you can find that question that regards the servant of the Lord Israel again and again. And I know Christians who wrestle with this. It's the problem of evil. It's how can this happen if God is God? And they raise up questions like Habakkuk. Or they look to the psalmist, how Lord, O Lord, how Lord. How long, O Lord, how long? And the Christian answer, of course, is found in Jesus. Jesus disrupted the messianic expectations of his friends, enemies, and audience. He did not take up the role that so many had taken up before, like the Maccabees, like Mordecai. The bruised reed he did not break. The smoldering wick he did not put out. In fact, what disturbed many who very much desired the release of Israel was his seeming gentleness to the enemies of God and the oppressors of his people. He did become a light to the Gentiles. That's undeniable. Through him, the Gentile world was filled with light. The God of Israel became no longer the God of a particular tribal nation in the Near East. The story of Israel and her God became the center of entire civilizations, including our own, and it continues today. That is the work that he did. It's a historical fact. He came to bear judgment. He came to seek and save the lost. He came to show the love that God has for us. He came to empower us to love others the way that God has loved and continues to love us. He came to show us that although obedience often looks futile, it has long-term power the world struggles to recognize. He begins the resurrection. We rehearse the story once again this year. We encourage each other to trust by faithful obedience. We await his coming and the completion of his mission. We are his witnesses until that day.